I think they're related. I personally remember quite liking Prometheus. So I just rewatched it and I have some notes. If you've been here before, you know the deal. So Prometheus has kind of been dunked on a lot in the past, and I think a lot of it is unfair. Mostly because like a lot of the criticism that went around was a lot of the CinemaSins bullshit, like, you know, the Prometheus school of running away from things.
This is exactly how Scooby and Shaggy would try to run from this thing. All she had to do was roll 3 times to escape its path.
Yeah, look, it's a little bit funny. It's a little bit silly. But there's a lot of other criticism levied against the film that I don't agree with. And some that I do. Let's get into why I think Prometheus is a good science fiction movie, but also a bad movie for the Alien franchise, I think. I have mixed feelings about it. First thing when you're watching a movie that I really like is Michael Fassbender as David. You pick up the mannerisms straight away that he's not human. Obviously, all the context clues and shit as well, but like his performance throughout this, and from what I remember in Covenant, I haven't rewatched it. I watched it in theaters and I haven't seen it since. You've got the opening sequence, well, not sequence, but after this, when they've coming out of cryosleep and they're doing kind of like the original Alien did, where you get this little eerie tour of the ship, along with then once we meet David on that tour through, then it's like a little more comfortable, like he's playing basketball and watching like old westerns, and I have mixed feelings about it. I think what it does do well is establish the sense of uncanny valley freakishness in David, where you can see he's not human and you can watch the way he interacts with humans, and it's like, yeah, okay, this is don't like that. I think also if you've already seen an Alien movie, you know where if as soon as there's a synth or a robot, or I don't remember what term they use in Alien, but as soon as there's one of those dudes, like, you know, they're a Weyland-Yutani little slave boy. So predictably, he does the thing again. And that is probably the first criticism that I want to bring up of Prometheus, that it really hits a lot of the same beats as the original Alien, which I guess for what is kind of a prequel and a fresh jumping on point, because I think the last Alien movie before this, not including AVP, was like 97, Resurrection, somewhere around there. And this came out in 2012. So they had a good bit, and the franchise needed like a little bit of resuscitating. And I think as a jumping on point, for someone that's never watched Alien before, which this is what it was for me, this was my first exposure to the Alien franchise, I think it works well as an interesting jumping on point. That being said, I think Prometheus undermines a lot of what the original Alien is going for. So when you've watched Prometheus first as your jumping on point for the franchise, and then you go to watch the original Alien, it doesn't really feel like they line up. But there's definitely a lot of interesting discussion, metaphor for religion in this that not necessarily religion, but faith, that I definitely missed when I first watched it, because I haven't watched this in like 7 or 8 years. It's been a while. Stuff like Weyland putting trillions of dollars into this expedition that at the start of the movie, Shaw pretty clearly states to the crew is based on faith. It took me aback for a second. I was like, what? That's kind of crazy. But then I remember the Crusades and colonialism is a thing. So no, I think the metaphor is apt. That being said, I don't think the colonialism Crusades metaphor really goes any further than that. Well, I wouldn't even say it's a metaphor. I would say it's a connection. And that's just one that I drew personally. I don't think I've ever seen someone else bring that one up. So that might just be me. But yeah, there's this recurring leitmotif that happens when we first see David in the montage sequence, so a little bit earlier than what's playing on screen right now, and comes up a couple of different times. Like when they first enter what we think is a tomb in the dome thing, the natural structure that they find on the planet. And then it plays a last time right at the end of the movie when Shaw is bagging up David's head to transport him around. And I don't think it's used very well. I think it's very distinct. It stands out whenever it's used, but the intention behind the leitmotif isn't clear. Tapioca, what are you doing? Yeah, you can see the curtain moving. That's because she's trying to get a little view outside, but I've got the blinds down for aesthetics. Stinky, you've got another window to go to. Yeah, she wants this one. I have very mixed feelings about the black goo. Definitely early in the movie where it's like, ooh, this is mysterious and stuff. I was like, okay, cool. I'm curious as to what this is, which is good. That's what they're trying to go to. That's the feeling they're trying to evoke in that opening scene where we see the engineer drink the black glue. Drinking glue would do that to you, but drinking the black goo and then dying and then going into the water and then contaminating the water and stuff. For a movie that seems so intent on explaining things that maybe shouldn't have been explained, they don't really explain what the black glue I'm going to keep saying glue. The black goo is. It's definitely some sort of bioweapon, but it seems to be related to the alien, but then also, not the alien, but the xenomorph or protomorph, or whatever stage we are referring to in this movie in particular. Yeah, it seems to be related to that, but it's never really connected. And then from what I remember in Covenant, also not elaborated on. And yeah, so going back to what I was saying about this movie seems very intent on explaining things that probably shouldn't get explained. I think explaining the space jockey background, bringing the engineers in and giving them a story is an interesting idea, and they're used really well in this movie when they're talking about all the concepts of like creating life, meeting your creator, having to destroy things that you have created. I think for that, the engineers fit in really, really well. But in the grander scope of the Alien franchise, it kills the mystery too much. It takes away what was kind of, you know, an incomprehensible horror of the original Alien. Like when they first land on LV-423, I think it is, in the original Alien, and they go into the ship and they find the cockpit with the space jockey in there. To me, and I think to a lot of people, based on Geiger's design, a lot of Geiger's work is very much like you're integrated with the machine, and not something that can like step in and out of it, which is what they do in this movie. The engineers have a suit of sorts and a helmet, and what we saw in the original Alien is a cockpit of sorts that they can step in and out of, versus the way that I interpreted it when I first watched the original Alien, and when I've looked at a lot of the rest of Geiger's work, is that it was a living being integrated with the machine. It wasn't something that could just break free of it. The machine operated using a living organism to function. And I think that's way more interesting, way more horrifying, really disgusting, and more unique. Because then this kind of just turns the engineers into another pseudo-deity alien that just looks like a really ripped human. Like I said, they're used really well in Prometheus, but for the greater picture of the Alien franchise, I think that this interpretation of what the space jockey is damaging. So then in that vein of explaining things too much, they get the engineer head, they take a sample of it, they do some genetic tests, and they figure out, yeah, human DNA most likely originates from engineer DNA, which I don't hate that, but I don't love it either. So to me, especially when they're talking about the concept of creation, and I wouldn't strictly go as far as say creationism, but the concept of creating and destroying life. The way that it's kind of functioned in the rest of the franchise is more along the lines of genetic engineering and selective breeding, like that was scheduled to turn on. I think making humans a genetic clone or genetic descendant of the engineers, again, works really well for Prometheus' story, but doesn't really work that well for the greater Alien franchise. One of the things that the Alien franchise compared to, say, like the Predator franchise, that's like a big one that people compare it to. The Predator movies are very human-centric, right? It's about, like, you know, the indomitable human spirit and how even in overwhelming circumstances, people can still find a way to make things work. Versus the Alien movies aren't really like that. Even though they kind of come to the same conclusion of your overcoming this overwhelming force. In the Alien movies, we don't really overcome the force. I think we escape more often than we triumph. And it's a bit more survivalism, that humans are a part of the universe or the universal food chain that is not actually at the top of the ladder. Versus with the Predator movies, where predators are seeking out a true fight, a complete battle, and then they come to Earth for that, you know, finding a real warrior to fight. That's very human-centric, of putting humans on a pedestal of, yes, we are great, we are worthy of the challenge. Versus with the Alien movies, you're very much just another guy on the food chain. But putting the engineers into the picture where there's some connection to the Xeno, whether they were developing it as like a bioweapon, kind of like the black goo, but something that is embodied as a creature rather than a substance, or whatever other connection that they have, isn't really explored. And it's really a shame that Covenant doesn't explore that more. Because I think Covenant is just kind of, it's Alien franchise slop. And that's a shame, because I think there's a lot of really interesting ideas set up in Prometheus that, like I've said many times, don't really complement the existing Alien movies before it. But on their own, they're very interesting. And I would have liked to see, Ridley Scott apparently had a trilogy planned originally. And then we got Covenant, which was a pivot from what he had originally planned. And then the Fox-Disney merger, or I guess Fox buyout. So then that got killed off. And then we've got Alien Romulus now, which is in between Alien and Aliens, I think. I haven't seen it yet. I'm going to. Yeah, so like there's really a lot of good little bits of storytelling and exploring the ideas of creating and destroying life. Like when Shaw and Holloway are having a chat after they've discovered the engineer, they've discovered that the sample is related to human DNA. And Holloway says something along the lines of, yeah, so all you need to create life is some DNA and a couple of brain cells. And then Shaw takes it really personally, because she doesn't explicitly say, but very overtly implied that she's infertile. And that poetically works very well with when she is artificially impregnated, coerced into impregnation with an alien creature, when, what's his name, David spikes Holloway's drink, and then Holloway and Shaw fuck, and then Shaw ends up with this alien octopus thing in her womb. God, that scene still makes my stomach turn. I had to like keep looking away. It's a really good scene, but not easy to watch. But yeah, poetically that works really well, of this person that has this idea that like she can't create life, being forced into an involuntary motherhood of sorts. It's also a nice contrast to Ripley's sense of motherhood in the earlier Alien movies, like with Aliens and Newt. And then is it Alien 3 or Resurrection, where there's the fucked up baby alien hybrid thing? I think that's Resurrection. Those movies do explore Ripley's sense of motherhood, and I think specifically Prometheus kind of touching on that, but like not really. It's a nice little connection. So the movie ends on the note of Shaw being like, well, if they created us and they want to destroy us because they were planning to go to Earth and let loose this bioweapon, I want to fucking know why. And girl, me too. And that's why I'm really gutted that we didn't get more of Scott's original vision for this prequel trilogy, because I think that could have been very interesting. Again, not good for the Alien franchise if you're looking for more Alien movies. If you're looking to have something that's like going in a different direction, but with a familiar framework, with a familiar setting, I think Prometheus and the hypothetical rest of the prequel trilogy would have been really good. But then we got Covenant, and then whatever third movie was being planned got scrapped. So we didn't get that. And so we have to evaluate what we do have. And Prometheus sets it up, but doesn't really knock it down. And I think that's the issue. But yeah, that's my last note in here. I still really enjoy Prometheus, as much as I just listed a bunch of gripes about it. I think it's pretty good science fiction. I think a lot of the storytelling is still engaging and interesting. Unfortunately, it doesn't complement the franchise that it's part of. And it kind of stands on its own, but it would have been a lot stronger with a complete trilogy of what Ridley Scott was originally going for. Which, look, realistically, we're not going to get. That's all right. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I will see you around. Peace.